Welcome to a new episode of the Rebel Radio podcast, and Mark and Matt here hanging with you. Well, the week's gone by, actors are still on strike, and now I'm starting to see things about delays and movies, and nothing official yet. Studios are contemplating like moving Dune back and Aquaman back and things like that because they can't promote these films. And it's just like, we talked a little bit about this last week, so I don't want to get too much into it, but it's like, we already had this happen with COVID, and the movie theaters are just getting going. You know, this weekend's going to be a big weekend with Barbie and Oppenheimer coming out, and Mission Impossible came out last weekend to big bucks, and theater owners are happy as things are getting going again, and studios are happy, and now this hits, and it's just like, when will it stop?
For real, man. It's, it feels like right whenever we're kind of getting back into the swing of things, there's always, some way that the theater industry hits a snag.
Yeah, exactly, man. So hopefully things settle quickly. There are some analysts believe that this will settle fairly quickly, and then there's some analysts believe that it won't. Depending on who you talk to. And so we'll see. Ultimately, I hate to say this. I get what the writers and the small people are fighting for, but it's hard to fight big studio bosses that make a lot of money, and I think ultimately they might win out and end up, they'll come to terms, but those writers aren't probably going to get the things they want just because there's just too much money involved in it all at the end of the day.
I'm hoping that they'll at least get the, the thing where they, I guess, studios want to be able to pay someone for like a small amount of time and use their likeness. And then be able to repeatedly use their likeness in films. And that seems to be the
sticking point. So I think if they can get rid of that, hopefully they can come to terms with it. I do think it is kind of funny. Like for example, John Cusack was a series of tweets trying to defend the writers and the people that these big actors say they're fighting for. Okay. And people would come at him like, well, you make millions. Why don't you give some money? And Cusack's consistent answers were like, oh, that's not how it works. You don't understand this. I have bills to pay too. So wait a minute. So you're okay with yourself making $4 million to make a TV show or a movie, but you can't give up some of that for the small person. So, it's like, it's kind of like they completely contradict themselves.
Yeah.
These big actors in defending the small people. Cause, and I think that's kind of calling the kettle black, so to speak. It's like, put your money where your mouth is,
Oh, everyone wants to be like Starship Troopers. I'm doing my part.
Right. And SAG came out and they asked Tom Cruise to get involved, and Cruise did put out a word for them and something, but you can understand why Cruise and Tom Hanks and the biggest movie stars in the world, it's hard for them to get involved in this because, their status quo is just so high. They can say something, but what can they really, achieve, So it's weird. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I guess this, we were talking last week. I can't remember when the last time this did happen. I guess it did happen in like 97-ish, 98, but it didn't last very long. It maybe lasted maybe a month back then or so. So, about 25 years ago. And I guess there's been some smaller instances, but they've always come to agreements in the last several years. So, everyone wants their money, I guess.
Yeah, everyone wants to get paid. It's like, I don't know what kind of pay terms they were trying to come up with. But, I see, there's not every case is cut and dry.
Right.
And
I get it. The studios are making tons of money, but I also don't get it. Like, you're a writer and you're crying because you only got paid $70,000 to write 12 episodes of a show. $70,000 is a lot of money.
Well, that's the thing. You get $70,000 just for helping break stories. That's you. Like, if your writing doesn't even make it into the episode, you're just helping. Right. Yeah. You're helping other people. So if it actually does, now you're talking like let's say 30 minutes of your writing makes it into an episode just for Hulu. All right. Just for a small company like Hulu, that's an extra $38,000. All right. And these things, they only last like 12 weeks or so, like month and a half. So yeah, you're talking like
70 grand.
$98,000. And then on top of that, they have to pay you royalties, which, decreases every year for a span of 12 years. But that equates up to $36,000 in royalties over the next 12 years. So essentially for that month and a half, you're getting $130 something dollars, $130,000 for. Yeah, it's for people like us. I'm like, it's hard for me to see. Like, okay, what's the AI thing I get, but the money thing, I'm like, okay, I get they're making more and more, and you're like, oh, when am I going to see that? It's like, hopefully they throw you a bone, but I don't know what kind of significant change is going to happen.
And it affects things like Comic-Con started last night. And, there's almost all movie studios. They already weren't doing panels, but the movie studios that were there and the companies all had to pull their panels because they can't promote the stuff.
Oh,
so Comic-Con is now focused on more of the comic book creators and things like that. All the toy companies are introducing toys and things like that, but there's like nothing really going to happen. Nothing's going to go on at Comic-Con this weekend because of the writer's strike. So Comic-Con was just kind of getting back to normal last year in San Diego after the COVID years, and now it suddenly takes this hit.
Yeah, now it's taking a dive.
So that expands out to other cons throughout the nation. These actors can go, and they're only going to be allowed to maybe show up at their autograph booths and sign pictures, but they won't be able to do panels. They won't be able to anything that's in public speaking. They won't be able to do. They won't be able to talk about any upcoming. Like if they do a panel at a con, I was reading, they can talk about stuff they've done, but they won't be allowed to field any questions about something that's coming out.
Okay.
So it's it affects the industry too that we are fond of, so we'll see. But, it is what it is. I continue to support watching movies. I watched some stuff this week, man. A lot of old stuff, really. I went through the entire Dark Knight trilogy this week, revisit it. I did it kind of backwards. I watched The Dark Knight, then Dark Knight Rises, then backwards of Batman Begins.
Nice.
Man, I like all three of them, right? But I still have a hard time when people say Batman Begins is their favorite. It's good, but it's not as good as Dark Knight or Dark Knight Rises.
I think they like the training aspect. They like to see the journey. They like to see him becoming the Batman.
The film doesn't really pick up until about halfway through.
I can see the appreciation for that. And there's ninjas. It's like, wow, ninjas, man. Yeah.
I mean, I say that with a fine-tooth comb. I mean, I like it, don't get me wrong, but it's not better than Dark Knight or Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
I have a hard time thinking it's better. That's just kind of, and then my whole thing is like, you do this whole thing where you destroy half the Narrows and all that, and then it's not even ever mentioned again in the rest of the films. Continuity is a little off there.
Kind of an important, aspect.
Right.
Of the film.
Yeah, Wayne Tower looks completely different in part 2 because they filmed it in a different city. So interesting things like that. But it's still a great trilogy.
Definitely.
And I continued my Nolan kick by rewatching Dunkirk. I'm still not sure what it's completely about. That's probably my most. It's weird because I like it, but yet it's probably my most least favorite Nolan film because, well, maybe not least favorite because I don't really like Insomnia at all. But
oh yeah.
But it's because it's told nonlinear. It's so hard to follow what's going on in Dunkirk at times. It's like you really have to laser focus when you're watching that movie. People found Tenet confusing. Tenet's only confusing because of complex plot, but it's not confusing as far as its storytelling.
Yeah.
Where Dunkirk's a bit hard to follow as far as what's going on. And that's just a fact, Jack.
That's a fact, Jack.
And then I just continued with watching old movies. I continue to watch. I watched J.J. Abrams' Star Trek just because I felt like watching it, and it just makes me miss that crew. I was hoping we could have gotten one more film with them, but it doesn't look like it's meant to be.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see. Maybe it'll still come together. Because I really like that cast quite a bit. The new thing I did watch this week. I did not watch this old stuff. I watched the new documentary on HBO Max, Max,
Just Max.
Superpowered, the DC story. It's 3 parts, 3 hours long, telling the story of DC Comics and their history, and it's really well done. It's a bit. It feels like they cut a lot of stuff. It's a bit jumpy at times. Like they'll be talking about one thing, they'll jump to something else. But it's overall, it's really well done. Better than some of the recent Disney documentaries that have been kind of subpar. Excuse me. It's narrated by my girlfriend, Rosario Dawson. She's doing the narration on there.
Yeah, there you go. And she's been away for a while, man. She's horrible girlfriend, man. You're at home slaving, and she
never puts out.
Yeah, dude. And, she's just going everywhere, waving around, her own lightsaber. She doesn't have time for yours.
And but it's good, man. It delves into their history. It delves into when they were struggling against Marvel, and they aren't afraid to mention Marvel in it. And
oh wow,
where they had it does get a little socio-political at times, like how DC keeps trying to mention, oh well, we were trying to follow the times and be with the politics and with the current cultural going-ons, and I'm like, okay, we get it. But they keep pushing that throughout the 3 episodes. And I'm just like,
oh, okay.
After a while, you're like, okay, yeah, we get it. You're trying to be culturally relevant.
Yeah.
They also, to me, did not give enough credit to Superman the movie for saving their asses in 1978, because it really did. A lot of people don't realize that Warner Brothers was about ready to fold DC Comics under, and then they were like, well, let's give it one last shot making Superman the movie. And they do give it some credit, but I feel like they should give it more credit. But it's smart to play off that documentary. They played off the idea that Superman and then Batman 89 helped save DC and become what it is, which in a lot of ways it really did. But it was also a lot of other things. There were DC was telling a lot of really good stories in the 80s with Watchmen and Crisis and Dark Knight Returns that did help sell books, the booming of the comic book stores. And they mention all that, but they kind of gloss over it. So I felt like they should have spent some more time on that. But it's worth a watch. I mean, if you've ever been a comic fan in DC Comics history, I think it is worth a watch on HBO Max. And I watched all 3 hours within one day. So, it kept me interested to do it all one day. But it just hit HBO Max like last week. So it's just brand new on there, and pretty good stuff.
Nice, man.
And other than that, man, that's about it, man. I think just a bunch of old movies this week, and I did watch Superpowered, the DC Universe story.
Man, I was able to finally wrap up season 1 of Babylon 5 between watching last week and this week, and man, it ends really good. It's you've got Garibaldi getting shot. I was like. I was like, no, there's no way he gets killed off, man. And now he's in a coma. And then I was like, man, I guess there's another episode, and it didn't make any sense, like the continuity. And I guess it had The Gathering as episode 23 of the first season, when there's only
actually the pilot episode.
Yeah,
The Gathering.
And so I thought I was watching the same episode, because it transitioned so smooth.
Where do you watch that one?
Tubi.
Oh, okay. Maybe they put it over for some reason.
Yeah, it was weird. And I was like, I don't get, why does the cockpit look different? It's like there's a different telepath in the cockpit and stuff. Yeah. And so I'm like, this is odd. And I go to look, and I'm like, an hour and a half. And I'm like, why is it an hour and a half? An hour and a half finale? And then I realized what I was watching, because I'd bought the disc set, and I know that the pilot episode's The Gathering. Right. And I saw that the episode, that was actually the pilot episode. So, but it was cool. I liked it. Chakar is has different emotions, I guess, going through there. First he's a dick, and then
by the time you're done, Jakar and Londo are going to be your 2 favorite characters that you're going to love and hate.
Yeah.
It's just, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're going to hate them for the decisions they make, but you're going to love them for the humanoids they are.
Londo.
They're 2.
My friend. Oh.
Just 2 greatly written characters. Just fantastically written.
Yeah. Yeah. They really are. And then I started season 1. I only watched the first episode.
Season 2, you mean?
Season 2. Yeah, season 2. And I do miss Sinclair. And I know you said that he's going to come back, and I'm not going to miss him for long because the new captain's going to tear it up. But Sinclair, I feel like he's super old school, man. He's not flashy, but he's like calm, and his command is kind of like a like a Kirk, but if he was he reminds me of like a Kirk-ish, but more on the straight and narrow and not sleeping around a lot. He does have his flames here and there, that come to the ship every so often, but he's very much smooth and kind of like a '60s vibe. I like him, Garibaldi. I like that he's his on his last chance on Babylon. He's cool, but yeah, definitely like Sinclair, Londo, and Jakar are my favorites so far. We'll see how it goes, man, in this season. I know everything escalates.
You haven't been introduced to Marcus yet. I think he's sometime in season 2 or 3. He's another good character also.
And then another thing is Destiny. I'm a little late on getting the expansion for Lightfall, but I finally got it. And played the first mission today, first couple missions, and it's fun. And people are trying to Alien is trying to steal the light that gives the Guardians powers, and you've got to basically thwart their effort to steal it by putting a veil around basically the source of power for your Guardian. So. Pretty cool story. I think they did better at the beginning of Destiny. Now, the stuff that's coming out, I just pick it because you've got cool stuff that comes with it. There's a new power, so that's cool. It's called String, which I think is weird. Like, guy was trying to come up with a name, and he pulled some pocket lint out of his pocket and was like, "Oh yeah, String." The cool string powers, and basically like a Scorpion but on steroids. You just got this, friggin' rope with a pointy, dagger at the end of it, but you're like super powered and swinging the thing around, taking out people whenever you're using your super. Pretty fun. But yeah, that's about it for me. I wanted to see Oppenheimer today. It just didn't happen. I had some stuff to do earlier, and but I'm definitely gonna attempt to see it tomorrow. Don't know what time I'll go, but definitely gonna check it out. You checking out Barbie tomorrow, or?
Yeah, Barbie. There's a slim possibility Wednesday I might try to see Oppenheimer.
Nice.
I don't really know yet. But yeah, I'm gonna take the baby girl tomorrow to see Barbie.
The baby girl.
So I don't mind. I mean, Margot Robbie for a couple hours, I'll be all right.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's not a bad deal.
Yeah, I mean, I can deal with that. And speaking of Babylon 5, it's getting a Blu-ray release, finally.
Oh, yeah.
In December. And from what I understand is it's the same version that you can buy on Vudu right now, or they've been showing on HBO Max or Tubi. It is the remastered version, so it's just simply getting a physical release. I don't see a point in paying $100 for it. Mm-hmm. But I can get it digitally for $35 if I want or something on Vudu. And plus I own all the DVDs already. So, and it's going to include The Gathering in there. For some reason, no TV movies. Straczynski actually has addressed that. He's like, I don't understand why the movies aren't being included. He's like, I wonder if Warner Bros. Forgot they exist. And he says it kind of tongue in cheek because the TV movies aren't super important except for in the beginning. Once you get to the end of season 4, if you can find it in the beginning to watch it, it's worth watching. And and the reason I say end of season 4 is because in the beginning makes the most sense to watch it. I won't even say at the end of season 4. Yeah, at the end of season 4, that's when you watch it, and because it doesn't ruin season 5 or anything, but the events that happen in season 4 in the beginning make more sense to watch it at that point.
Okay.
Even though it's a prequel, you want to watch it after you've seen everything else for it to make sense. You'll appreciate it more. So that is getting a Blu-ray release later this year for people that want to get a copy. But the animated movie comes out here in August, not that long from now.
Yeah, that's right. It's coming out, so hopefully I can get a little farther along before it does.
And so you do some news. You ready for news?
Ready for news, man.
This is interesting. I never thought about this but like the original Ninja Turtles cartoon and all these streaming wars, it's not streaming anywhere. I never thought about this. Well, come to find out, the rights were owned by someone who was not sharing them. But good news is Nickelodeon, who's owned the rights to the Ninja Turtles for a while now, finally got the rights to the original cartoon, all 100 something episodes. And so hopefully it's coming to Paramount Plus here real soon.
Turtle Power, man. I remember going to Burger King and they had the VHSs that you could buy there exclusively. And I think I still have some floating around somewhere.
Yeah. So hopefully they'll be available to watch streaming soon. You can buy the DVD sets for fairly cheap, but
yeah,
we live in a convenient society, ready to just watch stuff online. So Aquaman 2 has been going through some reshoots. Article hit Variety and Hollywood Reporter this week about this. 3 rounds of reshoots. That's a lot for a movie. Word came out earlier this year that the movie was a mess. And then, of course, James Wan and Jason Momoa have been talking about it. They're saying, no, it's not a mess. And James Gunn has even said, no, we're reshooting some stuff so that it fits in with the new continuity and things like that. And we're removing stuff. Apparently the Ben Affleck scene is being removed. We already know they pulled the Wonder Woman cameo from it. Because James Gunn doesn't want to tease people with stuff that's not going to happen. So we'll see. I do think it is interesting. A movie that's coming out in December. There's no promotion for it yet, not even a teaser trailer or anything. And now with the strikes, may wait longer to see if the movie's going to get delayed again. Things just aren't looking good for Aquaman 2. Let's just be honest.
There's so many rumors that were swirling earlier. I know we talked about them on earlier episodes, but it's like, and now this, it's like, not feeling too enthusiastic about it.
Press certainly did not help The Flash, which is a shame because The Flash actually came out really good.
Yeah, it did.
For some reason, people just didn't go see it. And so it's not, and it's a shame for this because I really like Jason Momoa's Aquaman. And I think he was cool in the first one. And I was looking forward to seeing more of him, but I will see more of him, but it's just not looking good for what the film may turn out to be. So we shall see how that turns out. Batman, Mask of the Phantasm. Mask of the Phantasm is 30 years old.
Damn.
It's getting a 4K release in September.
There we go.
So anybody that's into the 4K upgrades, there you go. And I only do that if I get them cheap. Like the reason I watched it Dark Knight this week, even though I own it on Blu-ray and I could watch it on HBO Max, they had the UHD 4K version for $5 on Vudu. So I was like, you know what? So
nice.
They don't really call it 4K on Vudu. They call it UHD, right? Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, UHD, same thing.
So I that's why I bought it and rewatched it, and it looks really good in 4K. Man, I really can't read what I fucking wrote down here. So sad. Oh yeah. Okay, this long-awaited Netflix He-Man movie that has been several years in the making is not going to happen.
Yeah.
Man, this movie has gone through back to, you're talking, Matt, back 20 years ago when John Woo was going to make it or at least produce it. Which I always thought was really weird.
He-Man.
Yeah, John Woo at one time was connected to He-Man and had his company to produce it. He thought about directing himself, which I always thought Woo was a weird choice for that. And so this movie has been in production hell for 20 years now. The studio is going to continue to shop it elsewhere. The production company, I shouldn't say a studio because it doesn't have a studio since Netflix backed out. And the movie is apparently pretty far along in pre-production as far as getting ready to shoot and everything. So, I like the universe of He-Man, the characters, and I enjoy them. And I would love to see a, wonderful live action version of it, but it's just starting to feel more and more all the time like it's just simply not meant to be.
Yeah, feels like that way, man. I just maybe one day we'll get lucky and we'll get the movie that we should get, but get Chris Hemsworth in there,
All right. And lastly but not least, if you were not able to see Guardians of the Galaxy 3 in theaters, August 2nd is your day to watch it on Disney+. So I will definitely watch it since I missed most of it the first time. All right. Well, let's today's featured film, man, and I'm sorry we had to watch this because I forgot that it's really not that good. And that is Robocop 2.
Yeah, unfortunately, not the greatest sequel.
No, but it's got its cult following. I'll give it that. There are people that appreciate, and when I was a kid or younger, shouldn't say a kid because I was already almost in high school when this came out. I didn't hate this at the time. It's one of those movies that you watch back then. You're like, okay, that's Robocop. And when you get older, you realize like, oh, it's not good Robocop.
Yeah.
I think to summarize this movie, so Detroit in the city in the future continues to be corrupt despite Robocop trying to clean up the streets. The police are on strike, which I'm a little confused by that. They really don't explain that in the movie that I picked up.
Well, yeah. Well, OCP bought them, and then they said they cut their pay by 40% and eliminated their pensions.
Yeah,
so they're on strike.
Makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
Because OCP, it makes no sense because OCP wants to build this great, wonderful city. So don't you have to get rid of the scum and crime?
Well, the city needs to go into default, and so they're trying to devalue the city too.
I know, but
and that way,
devalued. So
they're really trying to put that thing to the cheese grinder, man.
So
that way the city defaults.
Robocop is the only cop that's still trying to do his thing with his partner Nancy Allen, and then OCP decides to put new prime directives in Robocop to make him a pussy, Robocop decides to fry himself to reset his grid. In the meantime, there's this drug on the streets called narc that everyone's shooting up, and there's this leader called Kane who's like the big drug dealer in town, and he basically gets killed himself, and they put his brain into a Robocop 2 that's supposed to be the new Robocop on the streets, but he goes mad and crazy and kills a bunch of people, and him and Robocop have a fight at the end of the movie, and that's essentially what happens in this film. And, man, this
battle bots.
Yeah, it's this movie's a little all over the place. The movie was originally was written by Frank Miller. Wrote a script. Everybody knows Frank Miller.
Screenplay and script. Yeah,
Frank Miller's script was deemed unfilmable, so the studio cut and chopped it left and right. Frank Miller fought with the studio, even though Frank Miller still made a cameo in the movie. They had a different director attached at one point, where they had a script that was they actually had two scripts. One that was Frank Miller's script, and they had one that was what's called Future Wars, I think, or something like that. And that one came closer to being filmed in like 1988, 89, right after Robocop 1, but it got delayed.
Because the writers left to go work on something else,
right?
And so they delayed the project.
They scrapped that script, brought Frank Miller in. They scrapped that director, brought Irvin Kershner in. Irvin Kershner was at the end of his career, about ready to retire. He really didn't care. He was kind of doing this money for a paycheck, and it shows. Peter Weller fought with the studio. He didn't want to do it, but he was under contract for a sequel, so he kind of was stuck doing it. And so the whole thing just came together to not make a very good product. But there are some interesting things to talk about this, and I guess for us, being this film was shot in our hometown, there's some unique perspectives to talk about this. Like, first off, when you know a movie's shot in your hometown, it gives you a realization of how filmmaking works, because if you go on IMDb, it lists several of the locations in Houston, but it misses some too. Because the ending battle, the Wortham Center was built here in Houston in 1988. It was built for plays and events and like an entertainment center. It was a brand new state of art at the building at the time. Now, it's not as tall in real life as it is in the movie. The movie, they make it look like it's taller with special effects.
Yeah.
But it was state of the art. The George R. Brown Convention Center was also only a few years old at the time. It was state of the art, so they shot some of it there. So the end battle looks like it's all at the OCP Civic Center, which is the Wortham Center for Houston. But then there's clearly a shot of Jones Hall. There's clearly a shot in front of the medical center, which you can tell. So it's like you could tell they probably different units shooting, and then it just shows you the power of editing, how they edited it all together. They made it look like it all took place in front of the Wortham Center / OCP Civic Center, but it's literally like at least four different locations in that final battle. And we only know this because we live in the city, so we're like, hey, I know that building. That's clearly Jones Hall, which is right down the street from the Wortham Center. And then I'm not 100% sure, but that one shot surely looks like the medical center. Especially the helicopter shot of all the buildings above. It looks like
center,
and
then, of course, that conference room, it's like, that's the George R. Brown. You can tell by the doors.
We've been in that room.
Yeah.
Where Robocop 2 first appears. That's obvious. City Hall is obvious, where they give the conference. The Budweiser Brewery, which is there. And from what I read, the warehouse fight where Robocop 2 goes and kills the drug lord and stuff. Yeah, apparently that warehouse is no longer there. It's long been torn down. That's why it's not listed on IMDb anymore. I was trying to find out where that was at, and apparently it doesn't exist. It's gone, which makes sense in Houston. That was 30 years ago.
Yeah, stuff comes and goes.
But I think RoboCop was very successful, so it made sense the studio wanted a sequel, and Peter Weller signed on for a couple of films, and the biggest thing about this movie is like it takes the idea of RoboCop and it tries to be like it with the weird commercials in certain parts, but it also completely fails to be like it because it doesn't understand what RoboCop was. Yeah, it was a satire on the possibilities of the future and technology and things like that. A satire with realism to it, if that's fair to say.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so RoboCop 2 just tries to turn it into a silly satire of itself in a lot of ways. It has good ideas. The whole idea of a bigger, better RoboCop that goes rogue. It's a good idea. But then some of it just feels, I guess it feels to us 30 years later, old and tired stories of just worn down streets and crime. Yeah. And I think today's environment of the world with the BLM movement and other movements, you watch a movie like RoboCop 2 and it's kind of like, we've seen this, we've been there. This is real life. We're tired of it, if that makes sense. So there is, in that sense, maybe RoboCop 2 was ahead of its time in showing socially cultural impact of things that happen in a different way, if that's fair to say. What are some of your initial thoughts on RoboCop 2?
It's I feel like they missed the boat on trying to connect with RoboCop's human side, because he's can't let go of who he was,
right?
And they touch on that for a little bit at the beginning, and then they just completely discard it. And I was like, they had something there. They had an interesting part of the story they just never worked with. Apparently there were some parts cut out where RoboCop was going to pass by the female locker room at the police station and check out a woman showering. And so I'm like, that would have been funny. He's just like, oh, yeah. But and then the part where I feel like he's being too goofy. Whenever he just doesn't get out of the car and Nancy's like, wake up, Murph. And he reads a dead guy his Miranda rights. Yes. She's like, you're talking to a corpse.
Yeah.
But there's some that I feel like are funny. Like when he walks into the club and he's like, isn't this a school night? And I was like, that's pretty funny. Weller, he made that role his. That's his role.
Give credit to Weller. Even if he didn't agree with the script, didn't really like it, he doesn't mail it in.
He moves well. Yeah. Even though he's very frustrated with the suit, he very Keaton-esque, makes it, work for him.
They did make the suit lighter for this one. It's made of fiberglass. It's made of fiberglass instead of whatever material they used in the first one. So it was a little easier for him to move in it, but it still was miserably hot. I don't understand why they changed his color. He's gray in the first one. All of a sudden he's like a blue in this one. It's like and there's no explanation for it.
Maybe to match the video game. Maybe because in the video game,
and the cartoon that was out.
Yep. Yeah, that had to be it. And then, so that, and then just randomly wanting to use the drug lord. They're like, she's like, all these cops aren't working.
I know, right?
Let's just use this crazy maniac drug lord and see how it works.
That's a good idea.
And then I'm going to feed him more drugs.
Because he's slobbing on the old man's knob. That's the only reason. It's like,
she one of his executives walk in and he's like in the jacuzzi with her. That's funny. It's weird how they made the business executive kind of like this, asshole businessman. Because before he seemed like he was actually fairly reasonable in the first film, and then now he's like all corrupt and shit. But I guess that's the way OCP just is. So you've got that aspect of it. And I know Siskel and Ebert, were kind of skeptical about the child who's part of that, criminal organization dealing nuke. So you've got that too, but I don't care too much. It's just kind of weird that you've got a child that's, a bad guy. Yeah.
For 1990. Now you probably okay. But 1990, I could see that was a weird story choice.
Yeah. And then I do think the versions of Robocop 2 that they were trying to come out with was pretty funny. You just have the one that the robot comes out and it pulls off its head and there's a skull underneath and it just screams and falls over. I think it's funny. I think the stop animation is not too bad.
Well, and they did it on like one of the early Mac computers. Yeah. Some of the animations and stuff.
Nice. And you still have the robot from the first Robocop in the movie makes a cameo in a commercial.
And that was my thing, right? Okay, weren't the Ed 209s in the first one supposed to take Robocop's place eventually?
Yeah.
So couldn't you have done this film? You could have made a Robocop 2 where they decide to move forward the Ed 209 program. They think they worked out the bugs. But turns out they didn't, and Robocop has to take down the 209s. And it could have made just as thrilling of a film, just as exciting. I guess maybe you risk rinse and repeat, since he fought the Ed 209 in the first one.
Yeah, but maybe.
I think it would have been kind of cool, if they had done something like that.
Yeah, and then, it's just, the fight with the drug lord again, but the drug lord's a robot, I don't know. It wasn't that cool to me. I think, maybe if they brought in some of the bad guys, the robot ninjas, I think were a better idea. They just had to be executed a little bit better. I think if you execute it a little bit better.
Had you seen Robocop 2 before this?
Yeah, I have.
So it wasn't a first time watch.
It's 3 that I think I've only seen like once or twice. I remember
you need to see 3.
Yeah. I think I remember him getting worked on in the in the sewers and stuff. They were trying to repair him and stuff. I remember that part. I remember his cool new gun that he had.
Because this era of film, Robocop came out, and I always kind of compare Robocop and Predator with each other because they came out the same year. Kind of futuristic science fiction films. And then they both had sequels that just weren't well received. Now, I like Predator 2, don't get me wrong. There's things I like about Robocop 2. But it just makes you wonder, like, if these movies had come out 10 years later in the late 90s instead of late 80s, they might have gotten better sequels, and that's the thing. Because Robocop is a really cool concept with a really cool character. And, and I'd love to see it come back. I know we had the Joel Kinnaman remake with Michael Keaton. I didn't actually hate that one. I'm fine with it. The cool thing about that one is I can watch it with my kids. And there's a lot of cool ideas in that Robocop remake. And then Neil Blomkamp almost made Robocop Returns a couple years ago. And actually some of his script was taken from the Robocop Future Wars script that never got made.
Oh, wow.
He was going to borrow ideas from that script and give those writers credit to make his Robocop Returns that didn't happen. So do I feel Robocop is a character that will return to cinema one day? Yeah, I do, because I think he's
definitely
iconic. Robocop also spinned off into a animated series that lasts about 12 episodes, which actually isn't terrible. You can watch them on YouTube. It's not a it's a very 90s cartoon, but it's watchable. There was even a TV show which mostly aired.
I remember the TV show, yeah.
Mostly aired overseas. I think it aired over here, but late at night. But overseas was very successful, and a lot of those have been cut into like little 2-hour movies. They were on Amazon Prime for a while. I think you can actually still buy them on Amazon Prime, but why would you buy them? Because they'll show up for free every now and then on there. So RoboCop had the Daydays video game. We have a RoboCop
the video game.
There's a RoboCop video game coming out later this year, early next year, where Peter Weller's returning to voice RoboCop.
Man, that's awesome.
And of course, so I think RoboCop is an iconic character that will make a return to cinemas. And it's a shame that RoboCop 2 just. I remember being a kid or young, and remember when this being filmed in Houston, it made the news. I remember I was driving somewhere with my dad. I think I've told this story before, and I saw we got blocked off and turned around in a street, and I saw a couple police cars that said OCP. I remember seeing that as a kid. I didn't see no RoboCop or nothing, but I was looking, and I remember my dad telling me, so they're filming RoboCop 2 in Houston and all that. And then, I think when I saw this much younger, I just thought, that's cool. It's filmed in my city. I never thought about the movie being any good or not.
Yeah.
And now I watch it and I realize, like, man, this is bad in parts. What's funny is it has moments. It really does.
It does.
It starts off a little wonky with the riots and everything, and then it gets pretty okay. Then it gets a little wonky again in the middle. Then it gets pretty okay again at the end. Like the final battle and everything. It's Kane. It's all fine. I don't really have any problems with that. It's all pretty well shot, well done. But it's just like it really is hard to believe that this is Irving Kershner's final film. The guy who directed Empire Strikes Back, and made this. And it was definitely a studio film for him. Apparently, he clashed with a lot of the actors. A lot of actors said they didn't get along with him very well. Maybe it was just the end of his career kind of thing. He didn't want to do it. And maybe that's why. Who knows?
Could have been.
I know Kershner fought with the studio over budget a lot. And part of that because the budget had already ballooned because of hiring the previous director and writing scripts. And when all that got canned, they already spent that money. So there were budget cuts on this to make the sequels. And Kershner fought with the studio over that. He never liked the look of the way RoboCop 2 looked and all that. He said, no, we need to make him look better. I mean, he goes, we have a live RoboCop on screen. It looks great. And then y'all want us to do this CGI mess and stop motion thing that looks terrible. And Kershner fought with the studio. And maybe that's a bit of Kershner's background working with Lucasfilm. He thought, hey, we could do this better. But they weren't allowing him to do it better,
Yeah.
So, and it shows on film that it wasn't as well executed as it could have been. It feels like RoboCop 2 just feels like another one of those missed opportunities on film. It feels like there's something there that could have been better and just didn't quite get put together that way.
Yeah, and even the mayor who's supposed to be, comic relief, I feel like he keeps using the same old song and dance throughout that argument. Yeah. And it's like if he would have just had that, just one outburst like that. And, I felt like he had some talent, and could have been used better, but,
right.
He's just, given the same line like 2 times,
His best scene in the movie, I think, is when they're introducing RoboCop 2 in the convention center, and he comes out, and this thing had just tried to kill him 10 minutes before in the movie, and look at his face of pure fear and everything. It looks like he's fixing to piss himself. And I'm like, hey,
yeah,
that's actually good acting.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a good scene for him.
Yeah. And of course we even mentioned, Tom Noonan played RoboCop. Tom Noonan seems to show up in these things. Like he shows up throughout these 80s and 90s movies and TV shows, usually playing like a bad guy or a thug or something. And he always plays slimy, sleazy bad guys very well. Yeah. He does a good job playing Kane in this. And, and he sells the part pretty well. And in fact, Frank Miller's cameo is with Tom Noonan whenever he's testing out the new nuke. And that's, he calls him Frank. The doctor's name is Frank in the movie.
Yeah.
And
Frank played Frank.
Yeah. And man, there was a comic book series of Frank Miller's RoboCop that came out, which was his original script ideas, and it was put out a few years ago. And then I remember reading some of it, and the there are a lot of similar ideas that did make it into Robocop 2, the idea of new Robocops and things like that. And but it was definitely, Frank Miller's script was definitely more in vein with the original Robocop, more of a satire of things. And and it's just too bad it didn't turn out that way. Studio felt it was unfilmable and would have cost too much. And it just shows you, as we had successful sequels with Aliens and the Indiana Jones films and Star Wars, but sequels were still taboo to some studios, even as late as 1990, and they just didn't believe in spending the money to make RoboCop 2 better than what it was.
Yeah. I know Miller. He was on set every day trying to learn the process.
Yeah,
and they used a lot of his ideas for RoboCop 3. The gun, the jetpack, kind of going underground. And there's some redeemable parts about 3, but
that's why he has a writing credit on 3, even though he didn't really write the script.
Yeah. But there's more redeemable stuff with 2, obviously. It'll never be as good as the first one, but it's definitely got some bright spots for sure. And it is cool whenever, the cops kind of come together and they're like, he's one of us, and they kind of help him up, and he's like, put me down.
Yeah. No, the first one's all-time classic that, it's just a modern classic, and it's a great movie. And, and RoboCop 2, unfortunately, is not, but still has its own little merits, small merits. Like I said, I don't hate the film, don't love the film, but it's cool. I like it because it's filmed in our city. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's the coolest part about it. And there's even YouTubers that will show you the scene of the movie and then the actual building in the shot, and they'll go through the whole thing. But that's cool, man, that you saw OCP cop cars. You probably saw that scene where they all kind of converge on the drug dealers.
Either that, or it might have been the kids with the fire hydrant scene. Who knows?
Oh yeah.
It had to be a street scene or something like that. Because most of this was all shot near downtown. I think the furthest out they went was the Budweiser Brewery. And then there were some shooting done in Los Angeles, but those were pickup shots and reshoots they did.
Yeah.
But yeah, most of it was all filmed along Franklin and Rusk and the outskirts of downtown and George R. Brown. And Franklin and Rusk, a lot of that's just right there near the Wortham Center, So a lot of it was shot right there. And then they shot, of course, the Budweiser Brewery on I-10.
Yeah.
I don't think they went very far where they shot it, but most of it was all downtown.
Yeah.
It's still pretty cool that it was all shot in our hometown. Houston's small claim to fame besides baseball championships. Robocop.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, man. We've got Robocop.
That's right. Maybe we should have a statue of him in our city.
There we go.
There is. Isn't there one of Robocop in Detroit? I think so. There's a Robocop.
There might be.
Yeah. And it's funny that art does imitate life. The fact this movie takes place in Detroit, and a lot of people don't know Detroit did declare bankruptcy in 2019.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
I did not know. I didn't realize that.
Yep. So, yeah, it happens. Next week, we are doing a movie that does not suck. Not that it's a little unfair to RoboCop 2. No, it's not. It does suck, but it's also it's a suckable, watchable film.
There we go.
But next week, we're doing a movie that is an all-time classic. Not my favorite Western from Sergio Leone. That's always going to be The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. That's my favorite. But definitely a very remarkably good film. In fact, we'll talk about this next week, but this is more Sergio's, it's his style, but it's also more of his art film. Like after he made Warner Bros. A bunch of money off the No Man with No Name trilogy, they basically let him make the movie he wanted with this movie. And that is Once Upon a Time in the West.
The railroad. The boom towns. A new life. And the promised land. Once upon a time. The widow, the land grabber, the outlaw, the gunman. The man in search of a name. A film by Sergio Leone, who gave a new face to the West with a fistful of dollars for a few dollars more. And the good, the bad, and the ugly. Starring Claudia Cardinale, Henry Fonda, Charles Bronson, and Jason Robards. A manhunt. A vendetta. In a new land. In a new kind of Western.
There we go.
Classic movie with Charles Bronson and Henry Fonda. Definitely in the same vein as his other spaghetti westerns, but he gets to, like I just mentioned, he definitely gets to be more of his playground with this. You know, he gets to be a little more artsy, a little bit more his style with this film, if that's fair to say. Not that his style isn't all over the other films, but the Man with No Name trilogy had to Americanize a little bit more. With this film, he's given time to do what he wants. I mean, the opening sequence of the film alone is 13 minutes long, and almost nothing happens. It's just all intense buildup,
all tension.
but it's a remarkable film in its own rights and a very good Western. But like I said, not one of my favorites. My favorite Westerns are always going to be Tombstone and The Last Mohicans. Yes, I know The Last Mohicans is a frontier Western, but still a Western. It's just not Old West Western.
Yeah, you're right. It's still a Western.
But so we're going to talk that next week. I'm looking forward to it. I've actually already started rewatching it because I want to get ahead of the game on it. And it's been a couple years since I watched it. And so I'm already picking up on things that because I had never seen this movie until about 2 or 3 years ago. I think I watched it around the time we did The Good and the Bad and the Ugly for the first time. Mm-hmm. And so I've been rewatching it. And I own it on Blu-ray, but it's also available on Paramount Plus for people that want to watch along with us. And so I've been doing my rewatch this week to get ready for it. And we'll talk that next week on the show. But until then, the rebelradiopodcast.com for all your Rebel Radio needs. And of course, we're on all the apps and all that good stuff. And if we're on one of those apps and they have a review section like iTunes does, take a moment to leave us a 5-star review. We really appreciate it.
Drop a review.
Out. And join our Facebook group and all that for interacting with us. And we're always open to movie ideas and things. So we have some ideas of what's coming up for you in the future. But until then, this has been Mark.
This has been Matt.
Remember, as always, just go there and
do it.